Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 26. Welcome to One Day Today. I'm really excited about our guests we have today. We have so much exciting news in general about our movement, but I just want to say hello and thank you for joining us. Right now, we have had so many developments in the I don't know how many months this has been going on with One Day, but we've been getting so much momentum, so much encouragement and love from people all over the world, and we're about to launch this movement to a new level. So I'm shocked still, and it's like we're not gonna even know what hit. You're not gonna even know what hit you when you see all the things that we have on the horizon right now. And I'm just so excited to share. I'm going to talk a little bit more about. We have an invitational event on Saturday where we want to allow you an opportunity to contribute your voice to all the things that are on our plate that are just so exciting. So I'll let you know about that in a moment, but I want to hop to it and introduce first our co-host, Matthew. How are you today?
Doing all right, brother man. How about yourself?
I am great. I am on cloud nine, floating kind of between Earth and the clouds right now. So I'm doing really well. It's been a crazy,
Yeah,
amazing, productive last week and a half.
that might be a huge understatement.
Yes, I agree. It's hard to even put it into words. I'm really, really excited about all the things that are coming, and it's this has been a passion and a calling, and I'm so happy to share it with all these amazing people who I keep on meeting just every day. All these amazing people keep falling out of the sky, including our two guests, which we'll share, give them an opportunity to share in a moment. But I'm fantastic. I can't complain right now.
Yeah, the curiosity is definitely peaking. There's been so many subtle little synchronicities that have just happened over the last week and a half, really. It hasn't it been like it's just been, and it's been a journey not getting attached to anything that's come up. Like just letting it be there and letting like holding the question, what does this want to become, instead of trying to turn it into something personal or like try to uh, make it bigger than what it actually is or smaller than what it actually is.
Hmm.
But just letting it grow organically and just see what comes out of it. um, and looks like it's going to be one of those days where my cam is messing up again, so that's going to be fun. But yeah, we've got an interesting show today. We were talking to Brigette backstage beforehand, and I have a feeling it's going to be quite the topical conversation today.
Oh, as it should be. I'm really excited about both guests. We have some amazing people up to extraordinary things. Brigette is up to awesome things. Jill Lublin is an amazing author, has a book called The Prophet of Kindness. I'm really excited to talk to her as well. But let's just get to it. We could talk about them all day, but let's actually bring them on. Let's first invite
Yeah,
Brigette. I'd like to say hello. Hi, Brigette Iarrusso. Hi,
Hey,
Brigette.
hey,
How
how
are
you doing,
you?
Abram? I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. Fantastic. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just gonna just have at it and say, or let you have at it and just say, Bridget, the stage is yours, and then we'll talk about everything.
Sure. So my name's Brigette. I'm in West Berkeley, California, which is one of the seats of the civil rights movement and homes of the Black Panthers. I'm proud to be living here, originally from New York City. And I want to tell you a little bit about the journey to becoming a CEO of a social impact business. I'm the founder of Embrace Change, and I'm in the business of disrupting and dismantling inequity in the coaching, consulting, and healing industry. I help coaches and healers or anybody with a service business to generate revenue, multiple six figures within a business model that is equitable, inclusive, and socially impactful. And I want to tell you a little bit about how I wound up becoming the founder of my own business when I ultimately came out of the nonprofit sector, grassroots economic, civil society development in Latin America and other places in the developing world, and really looked at capitalism as a yucky, icky space that was not for me. And in fact, I rejected the path to becoming an employee in corporate America, from a very young age. And fast forwarding and looking through my life, I could never imagine being the founder of my own corporation that actually does generate capital as a way to create social impact. And So it all really happened. It precipitated an event when I was about 4 months pregnant with my little girl, Tallulah, who's 6 now. And my mom, Dolores, was born in Puerto Rico in 1945 and lived her whole life in service to other people, as most Latina women do. She was an incredible mother, very active in our church, did everything for everyone, and did nothing to take care of herself. And at the age of around 68, she had a massive ischemic stroke in her right brain, which destroyed 40% of her right brain and left her overnight severely disabled and incapable of doing anything for herself. And I'm an only child. And it was myself and my husband, Jason. And I remember going to Florida, flying there and not knowing what was going to happen or how this situation was going to impact my life and my pregnancy. And the next 5 months of my life were just a blur of medical trauma and chaos. And through it all, I remember beginning the work of understanding the power of our mindset and the power of how we are responding to situations, because ultimately we don't control the situations that occur in our lives. I couldn't have controlled my mom's stroke or everything that happened after that. But I did begin to notice that I can control my internal response to it. And at the time, my entire focus was on Tallulah, on that baby in my stomach, and just thinking constantly about her experience with trauma and not transmitting that trauma, and how to breathe and stay resourced and eat well as I navigated the months of crisis that I had to navigate with my mom's situation, where she was at near death for many, many months. And we had to do a lot to make decisions around keeping her alive and how and which way. And she was actually cognizant and able to make decisions with me, but it was a really difficult situation to navigate. And during that time, my husband's father, we found out, had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and had been hiding it from my husband. So on top of everything that was going on, my husband's father was dying. And so we had a newly disabled parent. I was 39 weeks pregnant. My husband had to leave to go to New York. We were flying all over the place. I was getting doctor's notes. And it was a very, very high level of crisis at a time where for most people, it's just about nesting and being joyful. And so out of that situation, I decided that I didn't really know if I wanted to go back to my job at UC Berkeley, but I went back. Why? Because it was the safe and the thing that you do. I had a job, I had a salary, I had benefits. And so I went back to work when Tallulah was around 4 months, and I was barely managing my mom's care. And as the universe will do, it dealt me the trifecta. So typically the universe will give you one massive change, chaos, a second massive change and chaos, and the universe will often throw in the third change. So I received my layoff notice within a few months of returning back to work. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is this opportunity in my life. And I have this 2 pathways in front of me. One pathway is to just throw in the towel and call it in and say, this is the end of anything that I could have ever wanted for myself. I'm now responsible for my mom. I have a baby. I don't have a job. My life is in chaos and there's nothing for me, right? There's no escaping this situation. And I can't say that I didn't have that thought for a moment, but there's another thought that entered in my mind at that time. And I'll never forget what it was. And the thought was, I'm ready for something better than this. There is some meaning here. And I have a possibility in this to go and do what I really want to do. Because my mom's stroke had me realize that there were no more stories I could create about, well, later on I'll do this, or maybe someday I'll start a business and I'll work for myself. My mom's stroke had me come to the realization that tomorrow is not guaranteed. I don't know how long I'm going to live, how long I'm going to be able-bodied. I need to just disrupt this bullshit story right now and just go and do the thing that I know I really want to do, that I've always wanted to do, that scares the death out of me, which is to start my own business. And I didn't know where to begin other than I had been teaching business. Had been in some business situations with a franchise that had failed miserably. I certainly knew the elements of what could or could not make or break a successful business. But the missing link for me was when a good friend of mine, who at the time was just a guest speaker in my entrepreneurial leadership class at UC Berkeley, he called me and said, I'm launching some type of coaching entrepreneurship program that combines mindset coaching and business coaching, and it's all about social impact. And I thought, that's really cool. And he said, I know you're really busy. You have a job at UC Berkeley, but I'd love to have you collaborate or just talk about you collaborating on this project in some way. And I said, it's funny that you're mentioning how busy I am because I just got laid off. And so that was the beginning of the journey, where at the time I had a business partner. We collaborated on launching his business. In that collaboration, it started to unravel and fall apart because I had a very clear vision and I had a very clear voice, and I had a very strong instinctual approach to how to drive a business forward. And it had to do with taking bold, imperfect action, not overthinking, not over curating, just getting out in a very human-centered customer discovery way, getting to know people, listening to business leaders and what they needed. And it was very much at odds with my business partner's approach to growing a business. Ultimately, he fired me from the partnership in the most incredible way that I could ever imagine. I mean, looking back, I was so angry and disappointed in the partnership failing. But at the time, what I failed to realize was that he was giving me a gift when he extracted me from our partnership and said, you need to go do this on your own. You have your own voice. You have a vision. You have a personal brand. You have an innate sense of how to grow a business and how to coach leaders, and just go and do your thing. And I literally dug my heels in and resisted for months. And I begged him to come back into his team and work with him. And he just kept saying, no, Brigette, you have got this. You can do this on your own. You don't need me to succeed as an entrepreneur. And after some resistance, I started to really understand and embrace the truth in what he was saying to me. And that was when I launched Embrace Change, which is my brand, and really decided that entrepreneurship was this journey of just trusting in my capacity to succeed. If all I did was focus on impact and being of service to people, being someone that was just showing up for the good of other people, connecting people, being generous with my business ideas, with my advice, with what I had learned in the 9 years that I was working at UC Berkeley around entrepreneurial initiatives. And what I realized very early on was that we're all born with infinite capacity to be entrepreneurial leaders, to succeed, because all entrepreneurship is a sincere, authentic desire to heal pain, alleviate suffering, and solve problems for other human beings. And we get so wrapped up in the bullshit narratives of business and capitalism and sales and making money that those things are simply secondary. They're the outcomes of what true entrepreneurship is. And what I realize is that that's how I was born. That's what I was meant to be. I was meant to serve and help people. And yes, I get to have a living. I get to make money doing that, as long as the ways that I show up and the ways that I'm doing business are truly in service to something beyond my own financial gain or just my own personal realization, which a lot of times we get caught up in that narrative of purpose. And it's not just about my individual personal purpose. It's about a bigger global communal purpose to create real change in the world. And for me, that's really been the catalyst for me to continue on this journey, because entrepreneurship is hard. It is not something that overnight is easy unless you're born into wealth and your parents are rich and buy you a team and give you all the systems and platforms and networks that you could possibly ever need. Entrepreneurship for anyone is a challenge, right? And if you have less access or less opportunities in terms of capital and networks, it can get even harder, which is why I'm personally committed to decolonizing and disrupting the business mastermind methodology and the mindset of growth, right? Of win-win, which is a beautiful idea, but in its implementation is often highly inequitable, because the individuals that can afford those types of communities and can invest in those types of programs are typically those with already access to opportunity and capital. So my business model is about making sure that people from different socioeconomic backgrounds and groups that are historically underrepresented in business get to be a part of that. And so I want to make sure I turn it back to you guys because I'm at about 15 minutes. I feel like I've been talking for a really long time. And so I kind of want to flip it back to you to continue the dialogue.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing, Brigette. You have such a fire and passion, and I'm so encouraged just not only by the amazing work you do, but you come across as just such a protector of, people who people who need it, people who aren't even able to protect themselves. It's so admirable that you're helping people who don't even know how to help themselves and don't even know their own power. And I think where did you, obviously, you were saying, there's 3 bits of chaos that kind of pointed you to this place that you are now. But how did you find that inner strength? Because you're just watching you talk, it's such passion and fire. And it's I just feel like it's amazing because we need people like you to show us our own power and to show people who are disenfranchised or minorities who are born in a system, but in a system of inequality and just systemically disadvantaged. How did you find that fire?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the second question, but I do want to speak to the first part, because when you say that I'm a protector, and this is the danger that we can fall into as white presenting people, I'm a white skinned Latina woman, I'm half Puerto Rican, I'm half Italian, and I'm very keenly aware that the way that I present in the world is as a white woman. And this allows me a lot of privileges that other people don't have. And I'm very, very aware of that. That being said, I'm also keenly aware of the fact that I'm not here to save or support or to even protect other groups, because in truth, marginalized communities have everything they need in terms of their own resources to succeed, but what they may not have is access and opportunity, right? So when I think back to my earliest days in working in Central and South America and going into very, very impoverished indigenous communities and really understanding the level of innovation, social enterprise, creativity that the indigenous farmers and leaders that I came into contact with had. They had so little and were able to produce in comparison to the access of resources that they had, incredible wealth in terms of farming and land and building and opportunities. But again, what they had access to was so limited. So I'm not necessarily here to save or help. I'm here to simply disrupt and look at the system where there's lack of access to capital or lack of access to a market or lack of access to an opportunity. And I'm here to simply connect, right? Because I've had clients that come from very different socioeconomic backgrounds than my own. And I'm going to say something that's going to be disruptive and it's going to be controversial, and I don't really give a shit. The same reason that racism persists in terms of white people's fragility and unwillingness to unroot their fucking discomfort with things, because white people are raised with comfort. We come first, our safety matters most, and we're centered in the universe, right? As the dominant culture here in the Americas, we are what matters always, right? And when it comes to the business journey, discomfort and disruption and constant resilience is what allows us to move forward. And as white people, many of us were not raised to be resourceful and resilient and to work hard for things. And we learn those skills, but a lot of other groups of people are inherently resilient and creative and innovative, and an enormous level of social innovation and creativity exists in the most marginalized communities, but we can't see it through our white lens. We don't necessarily value it in the same ways we value innovation and creativity when white people bring those ideas to the table. And we're notorious for appropriating and co-opting that natural wisdom and creativity that comes out of the most marginalized communities. So what has to shift is that we need to look for creativity and innovation in places that we're not used to looking for it. And we need to move capital through this system, because a lot of times all someone needs is support. Yes, they may not have a community of support. They may not have someone to watch their kids while they grow their business. And they may not have the right systems or the right resources, but they have the capacity. They may even have, and I believe, frankly, greater capacity to succeed. And as far as myself, I'm a combination of those two things. I'm on the one hand, this privileged white woman that had opportunities afforded to me because of the way I look. I got into Columbia University because I begged, bartered, and pushed my way in, because I believed that I should be there, because I had the audacity to say I didn't get in, so I'm going to like battle with the dean to get into that university. I don't know that would have happened if I looked different than I look. It could have, but I doubt it. I don't know that the dean would have even heard me out in the way that I spoke. And that's one of the things that I want to really kind of demystify, is this concept that white privilege means that like everything in my life came easy and I was born with a silver spoon and I never had to work hard and I never had trauma and I never had tragedy and I never had disparity. That is not what white fragility and white privilege means. I had some bad things happen in my life. My mom had a stroke. I had trauma. I have had hardships. I still have white privilege. I still have the privilege to mouth off to people in positions of authority and not get shot, not get in trouble. I have the privilege of selling weed in college and then talking my way in a cutesy way out of getting in trouble with the cops and getting a slap on the wrist, where frankly, if I was my cousin Leticia and I looked like her and sounded like her, I would have gone to jail. You know why? Because my cousins did go to jail for drug stuff when we were teenagers. The same shit that I did, that I didn't get in trouble for, my cousins went to jail for. One of my cousins committed a petty crime when he was 16 years old, and he went to jail for most of his adult life. And guess what? I committed petty crimes too, but I'm a white girl and I get away with them. And I'm not afraid of cops, because I know I can talk my way out of a situation. And that is what white privilege is. So yes, I'm resilient. Yes, I figured things out. Yes, I have my business and it's successful. And yes, it's a combination of two things. My path looks different than other people. Is that to say other people with different hardships that don't have white privilege can't equally succeed as entrepreneurs? Absolutely not. That is not at all what I'm saying. Every single human being has the same exact capacity to succeed. We're all born equal. But after we're born, we don't all have equal access, equal opportunity, and equal treatment. And that's where things start to shift and become very, very different for Black and brown people on that journey of entrepreneurship, particularly in the space of social enterprise, when they're not willing to sign up for and buy into just the purely capitalistic model of doing business, which is ultimately most of what we're surrounded by. And capitalism is ultimately where racism began. It was a business model. And this is why, as a business expert and a business analyst, I need to invite people to stop making racism about their personal feelings and their emotions. If you have a hard time accepting or understanding the constructs of systemic oppression and racism from a feelings or emotional stance, let's get data-driven. Let's get analytical. Let's zoom out and look at how systemic oppression was started with a cleverly designed business model to leverage free labor for financial gain. That's all it was. It was, how do we take advantage of a group of people that we can demonize and marginalize to use their bodies for labor? Just, that's all it was. We're going to use these people for free labor. And when that worked, and it was a thriving economy, here we go, America, the America dream. Guess what? The reason you have your American dream, your house, your land, your opportunity, is because it was built on Black slave labor. And then when so many people said, this is horrible, we can't do this to humans, and abolition happened, then people were like, shit, Now what? How is this system going to work? We're not going to have the free labor anymore. So what are we going to do? We're going to create an amendment that says people get to be free, except we're going to slip a clause in there that says unless they commit a crime. And then we're going to turn those same Black people into those criminals that we then can use to do the labor. So then the system just made it different, but it was still a business model, right? So the business model went from using free labor in the form of slavery to free labor in the form of criminals. And guess what? I could go on and on and on, but fast forward, here we are. We still have the same system. And some of the shit that's in our houses is made by prison labor. And a lot of the companies whose stuff we use, all the things are made as a result of that system of oppression, which is now just our prison industrial system. And so the only way to disrupt it, unfortunately, is not going to work. We have to smash the entire capitalist construct, start over. And bad news, that's not happening, right? Too many people benefit from it. It's our entire way of life. We've been acculturated and born into consumerism because capitalism is what makes America great. All the other things are stories. And so the only way to disrupt it is you have to unfortunately work within the system. And the only way to disrupt capitalism is to figure out how to move capital, because capital started out historically concentrated in the hands of the white dominant male culture. Not that much has changed fast forward. And we have to get really creative and innovative to figure out how to move that capital from the hands of people that historically have the most access into the hands of people that historically have the least access. And when we can get enough capital back into Black communities and back into Black leaders and Black businesses and amass enough people that have leverage and influence as a result of having that capital to start to dismantle and disrupt the system where just a few really bad companies are running the show here in terms of political influence. The only way to tip the scales is for other people, other kinds of businesses to have that kind of money and that kind of influence. And it's going to be a long journey because conscious capitalism, conscious business does not have the same growth pattern as unconscious business and capitalism. So that's the challenge.
So yeah, that was a lot. And there was a lot to unpack there. Unfortunately, we do not have time to unpack any of that right now because our next guest has a hard time limit.
It's all good.
So we need to move forward. I would love to have you back on and where we actually have space to dive into a lot of this, especially because there's a lot of things that you said in there that there's like, I do resonate with a lot of it. And I do appreciate all of it. And then there's also a lot that you're saying that strike me as very core assumptions. I'm not sure if you actually realize they are assumptions. The origins of capitalism, no one really knows. Just that's one that I picked out. And that's not to say that your conclusion is incorrect. I do agree with where you are going with it, that it does feel really necessary to me to disrupt this system, that this system does not work. I wholeheartedly feel that 100%. And in a lot of ways, like, because that feels so real to me that this system does not work, the discussion of how we got here kind of feels pointless in a way. The reality is we're here. This is what we have today. How can we make the best of it going forward? How can we use what exists today and create something new and loving and compassionate and cooperative and co-creative going forward? Mm-hmm. That's the real conversation I would love to have.
So when you say the real conversation, I'm gonna invite you to notice right now in this conversation where what I'm perceiving is there is a bit of a judgment in what you're saying, right? So I just want to kind of reflect that back to you. So when you say let's have the real conversation, you're implying that this one that we just had isn't. So there's a little bit of that. And I kind of want to just leave it with that, but there's a little bit of a tone to what you're sharing that, while I appreciate it, does kind of still perpetuate this idea of your perspective as a white male in this conversation is somehow more relevant. And I can understand our desire to dialogue and have a difference of opinion, but just the use of that terminology at the end kind of shifts it for me energetically, right? And then you use the word kind of kinder, or gentler. And there's also implications in that. There's a little bit of like what is considered a little bit of bypassing of passion and emotion, and that somehow gentler, kinder conversations are better than more forceful or powerful conversations. And these are some of the narratives that can go on between and among people of different ethnicities and cultural backgrounds, right? A lot of times as white people, we like to say, well, if you would be less intense about it, it would go better, or if you were different about the conversation. And I'm not saying that's exactly what you're doing, but there's some nuances of that here that are really, really interesting to dive into. I would definitely love to get into that. And I do agree that we should definitely focus the conversation on, 3 specific ways that we can disrupt traditional capitalist models, which would be use our own leverage, our own capital, and our own time to center, promote, and partner with Black and Brown businesses for their benefit, not just our own. Find ways to refer and create mutually beneficial business collaborations among Black and Brown and white business leaders, and take actual capital from our own businesses and invest them in Black and Brown businesses. So those are 3 specific ways that we can begin to disrupt the typical ways of business as usual, right, in our capitalist system. And obviously spend our money in general with Black businesses. But if we have a business, there are deeper ways we can invest our capital.
Right. I want to shelve this for one moment. I want to don't lose our spot there, because I want to let Jill have a chance, because she has a hard deadline. But we're gonna, after Jill speaks, let's bring this back up, because there's a lot of things that came up that I see so much in that, in the subtext of all that. And for me, I see this as a personal discovery. It's like when we actually look in the mirror and see who we are, there's no separation. And it's like, it's a self-discovery. When we can actually hold up the mirror and see our neighbor, that's when we can actually transform the world. Because it's right now, it's like, it's the network of conversations that humanity, that we believe that Jews and Palestinians will never get along, that Pakistanis and Indians are never going to get along, Democrats, Republicans are never going to get along. And it's like, we believe those because we say them, and we say those words because we believe them, and they become these self-fulfilling prophecies in which we avoid responsibility for the peace in our own hearts and in our own communities. And all of that happens within me. And I'm not going to change the world by trying to change you. I'm going to change the world by changing me. And that's, it's ultimately all these systems of oppression and of injustice were the product of us disidentifying with who we actually are. And when we focus on the label and the separate, that it's like, it's the other, they're different, they're not human. And as soon as we're built systems on dehumanizing others, but I can't wait so we're going to talk about that once I'm going to give Jill a chance to share. But thank you so much, Brigette, for sharing. And I really admire your passion, and the world is so lucky to have you, because you're such a force. And it's like we need passionate speakers like you who can wake us up. So thank you. I acknowledge you for who you are, and we'll come right back with you. I want to give Jill an opportunity to share. So yeah, first off, thank you, Jill. I'm so happy to have you. I have you're a best-selling author. You've written, how many books have you written?
I've written 4.
Written 4. So all 4 of them are bestsellers, huh? That's terrific. I really I'm excited to hear you share. Just so our viewers know, Jill is a best-selling author, wrote a book called The Prophet of Kindness. I'm really looking forward to hear you share. So I'm gonna stop talking. I'm just gonna let you share, and then we'll have a moment to talk after you share. Does that sound good?
Great. And I would love a more interactive conversation with you. So Absolutely. I'm going to pour out a little bit, and then I want to interact with you. Would be just super if we could.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, Jill, the stage is yours.
Oh boy. So thank you. I'm a publicity expert and have been helping people with their messages for over 20 years. And what I know about the power of message is that the power of message is what brings people to a place of sharing their heart, of sharing authentically with others, so that others are moved by you into action, the action that, well, you want them to take, that you must have them take, or that they take because they're so attracted to you because of the power of your publicity and what you've created as your message. So I am a messenger of messengers, and I'm passionate about this. I teach virtual publicity courses, and I've just been really dedicated to helping messengers get their message out for many years. And, it's interesting. I'll just share a little bit with you about my own journey. And that is that I actually started in the music business, and I started with independent record labels. And, it was interesting to me because I was always with the underdog, and loving the underdog. I always somehow find myself in positions as director of promotion and publicity at multiple independent record labels. And my friends at, the huger record companies, well, they had big budgets. I remember my friend who was working with Tracy Chapman, they had a $2 million promotion budget. Well, give me $2 million, I'll make anyone famous. But really what it came down to was, how do we create visibility without spending a fortune? I was working with independent, like I say, underdog record labels. We didn't have budgets. I hardly had a budget. I don't even know if I actually had a real budget. We just kind of made stuff up and did it as we went along. And that was so powerful, because a big lesson I learned in the music business was really about perception. Life is all about perception. And what was great about that was I took that into everything I did. And I actually opened up my own PR agency at the time. I wrote this beautiful book, Guerrilla Publicity, because I was privileged to work with J. Conrad Levinson, the father of guerrilla marketing. And he said, why don't you write the book on guerrilla publicity? And I'm so blessed for that. We have our 3rd edition now coming out. And, here's what was so wonderful about that is that I love doing that, but I realized that owning a PR agency and the fees I actually charged monthly was not necessarily affordable for entrepreneurs and small business owners. And my heart lay in those people. I don't know if that's grammatically correct, but you know what I'm saying. Meaning my heart is with entrepreneurs and small business owners. And so I actually turned my whole business around. 9/11 happened, and the world of publicity kind of fell apart, meaning anything around budgets for that. And so I took what I do and I turned it into a virtual publicity course, and now I empower people at a really affordable price to get their name out there and increase visibility. And alongside that, I also help people get real book deals. I'm so excited. We actually have a big one coming out. So people with, let's say, a book in their heart, I help them get actual real book deals without a word written. So that's pretty powerful. And people who are self-published get foreign rights deals. And, I was bopping along in my business, and then one day I actually had an accident. And I fell and fractured both ankles at once in multiple places. Well, I like to say that, God stopped me in my tracks. I mean, I was going fast like all of us do. I speak a lot on virtual stages and, of course, in person where it's appropriate. And I just think, I had to stop. And I did. And that's actually when the virtual publicity class got born, where I could serve more people at a lot less cost. And that's when I actually started a TV show called Messages of Hope, because what I'm always invested in is people's powerful messages. They're messages of positivity and incredible stories that they get told. And so on my show, which basically was done in a local cable access TV format, which I think is a great way to get a show done. And it's free, completely free, just like StreamYard is and other things. So, I got to do this show and interview amazing people. Some you've heard of and some you actually haven't, like the woman born without arms and legs and her message of hope. And so, what I found was that this accident led to a beautiful way of doing something new that I thought was important, of impacting people with positive messages and powerful stories of hope. And what I know, Abram, is the power of media to really affect others. And, you know, we're seeing it now with Black Lives Matter. We're seeing it now with the power of people and their message and moving forth and making statements that are true and real and focused. And it's changing the world. And I know that the media can do this. You know, yes, we can be given alternative and differing sides and points of view, but that's part of what makes America strong. And so, and God willing, people will listen to these different points of view. But I'm just thrilled and blessed to understand the power of media, to help others get in it, to have access to media, because there's lots of ways to access media. And I'm helping my clients turn around their messages to be the message of now, to be a message that's relevant in troubled times and in the times that we're living in. So, so that's part of my message, is that, well, your message matters. And so that's what I want to start with saying. And go ahead and jump in here and ask me what you think would be helpful for your viewers and what you're up to.
Yeah, thank you, Jill, for sharing all that. I think it's amazing that you found a career that you're able to empower people and to share their gift. And so did you plan on being in publicity? Did you plan on being an author? Like, how did that, like, where did you see your gift that you could contribute with? Like, where did that come about?
Well, okay, so here's the story is that I actually grew up, you know, frankly, from a family who was pretty blue collar. There was nobody who went to college. Not only did I graduate college, but then I decided I was going to go to law school. And well, I thought law school would be a great place to make a difference, except that then I got to law school. And I have one of those highly creative minds. I'm not a linear thinker per se. And that creativity is very helpful in publicity and crafting messages and all the good stuff involved. But, you know, law school was not a good place for a sensitive and highly creative person like me. And I ended up dropping out, much to my father's chagrin. However, at that point, I started working in the music business because that's where I was attracted to entertainment, something fun and dynamic and creative. And in there is actually where I found my real path, the creativity of promotion and publicity. I found that I was great at it, that it's a gift of mine. I hear people's messages and I can go underneath them and actually help them kind of pull out what's true, what's authentic, what's resonant for what they want to do. So it actually came from dropping out of law school. And then because I was actually good at it, I continued to work for other people, then opened up my own PR agency, and then closed that saying, I don't want the stress and struggle of running an agency. I just want to do it with people. I want to help them, and I want to actually get a lot more people learning and understanding and actually doing their own publicity, being really champions of their own message, as well as the opportunity for them to understand how to utilize one of the most powerful forms and of getting their name out there, getting their voice out, getting their business out, getting their message out. It's publicity. It's the media. So I want to really give people that gift of getting their message out. And that's how that all came about.
I love it. That's great. Go ahead, Matthew.
Well, this may seem like a really strange question, but it's the one that's there. What exactly do you see as that? Like, what is that gift? What is getting someone's message out? What's the word? What is so empowering about that? Or what is it? What is it that is like? I'm sorry. There is a question there. It's on the tip of my tongue.
So I have can I inject
Yeah,
here, because I have a feeling it's about how do I find their message and how do we know it's it? Is that it? Is that close?
Partly, yeah, but like, what is it that you see, or what is it that you have experienced about getting your message out that's so powerful? Like, what is it that makes that such a cathartic experience?
Well, let me just tell you, number one, if a small business owner does not have media, I'm going to tell you, it'll affect their business. I mean, yes, there's a lot of people who can do business without it. That's true. But what I also know is the power of what media does. I've seen it drive prospects, drive clients, drive money. I've seen it drive familiarity and trust, which is so key now, right? Because when people, I call it the I've heard of you somewhere syndrome. When people have heard of you, there's a natural tendency, an increased likeness for you. They just like, oh yeah, I've heard of that guy Abram and Matthew. Yeah, okay, I've heard of Brigitte. I've seen them somewhere. I call it the I've heard of them somewhere syndrome, right? And so when somebody's been heard of, I promise you, and I got case study after case study, products will be bought, services will be rendered. They will come to you and hire you as a whatever, fill in the blank, coach, consultant, speaker, whether it's a product you have. Just as an example, I had a woman, she created this great product, by herself, this fun little accessory. It was an accessory for women, $25 a piece. And through using publicity tactics, she actually got in a blog post, one blog post, check this out, 600 actual purchases of her $25 product from one blog post. That was a $15,000 day for her. This is a woman in Colorado, an entrepreneur, had a great idea for a women's accessory, made it happen through her sweat, through her own money, through her investment, through her passion. And so this is what I really find is that small business owners are passionate about what they do. They're usually brought to doing what they do because of something that drives them internally or externally, perhaps something that happened. So it's that old thing that if nobody knows about you, how can they be with you? How can they be part of your stream of products, of people who love you, of tribe, of who buy from you? And how can you reach people unless you know how to get your word out? And I think that's a real key, no matter what you do, no matter what business you're in. And believe me, I've worked with all kinds of business. And some I didn't even understand what they were telling me. Like, what did you just say? I don't get it. Like the bunch of scientists who owned a shipping container company. And I'm like, I don't understand how you work. And I have no idea what you just said to me, but good thing you hired me because now we're going to make it work in a way that's smart. And I find that a lot of people have such passion from their hearts and belief in what they do, but they're not able to communicate it in a way that others can say yes to. And that's the, shall we say, problem I'm helping to solve.
Great.
Yeah. That I know you don't have much time. Like you've got what, 2 minutes where you have to go, basically.
We got about 4 minutes. Is great.
Again, so many questions.
Yeah.
There is one question that we've been asking, and since we'll just jump entirely to something else since you don't have much time, but this is something we've been asking everyone that's come on the show lately, and that is, what does one day mean to you?
What does one day mean to me?
What does one day mean to you?
Meaning one day or your movement?
Or like both, either or.
To give you a little context to that question, like the word, the one day came from, usually people use the term one day like it's something in the future. Like one day I'll be happy, one day I'll have this, one day we'll have that. And it's essentially avoiding responsibility for the only moment we ever have, which is right now. And that's why our tagline is one day is today, because if we say it's tomorrow, then we're just letting it float with the wind, which way the wind blows. And when we ask what does one day mean to you, like what in the essence of, like, from like the essence of one day, because that's casting into the future, what does it mean to you? Like when you hear one day, and when you see what's happening in the world, when you see, why this movement for us, it seems like the world is opening up to what we're doing, because there's never been a bigger opportunity for connection, for collaboration, for community, because we're seeing how did we get here? Like some people are shocked that the world is at this state, and some people are not shocked at all because they've been living at the bottom echelons of society. But there's a lot ruminating right now, and it's like it's always darkest before the dawn, and like something's opening up. And I just would love, we've been asking our guests because everyone has a different perspective, but with that context, what does one day mean to you?
So I'm with you on, this one day in the future piece, because there is no other one day, right? And anyone who has experienced someone who died suddenly, lost somebody in an accident, boy, that's hammered home. There is no more one day, right? Or I'll hug you later, or we'll talk about this another time. It is right now, and so for me, I try to, and I say I try because I'm not perfect in this, but I intend to be complete in each moment, right? So what am I doing to be complete in each moment? Now, here's the thing, and as a publicity person, as a business owner, the truth is I also plan, because this is part of my training and part of, I think, important things, at least in my business and life. I'm thinking 3, 6, and 9 months ahead, because that's how media plans. Right. So I've been kind of trained myself to also be looking ahead, but I consider it like a gardening process. So for me, one day right now means I'm planting seeds right now, one day, in this day, for my one day to grow, for my seeds to grow. And they will grow as a garden, and they will be beautiful, and they will grow in different times, and they will be fruitful, or they won't. That might happen too.
Right.
And we all have failures and, things that don't bloom and whatever. That's fine. But what I do know is, as much as possible, to be complete right now, in this present time, in this present moment, to say what needs to be said, to not leave things as much as possible on the table. And, then listen, I wrote a book, Prophet of Kindness. There is kindness and compassion in how we communicate. And I think that's important. There are times where it's better not to deal with something right now. And maybe one day we will get to that when it's important. So I do think that for me, I focus on the most important priorities right now. And then there are some of my one-day projects. One of my coaches, he calls it the parking lot. Put them in the parking lot, and you'll get to them one day where it's appropriate. But mostly I look at life as that gardening process. And so I keep planting my seeds, and they will bloom. Right now I'm doing kindness circles. I love it. It's completely free for people. And that project was a one-day project. When Prophet of Kindness came out, I'm like, okay, one day I'm going to do kindness circles. And now I'm doing them. And they're, they've launched. Actually, today I did my third, and that was pretty exciting. So, I invite people in for free, and they're just spreading, and they're gardening, and they're blooming. So I'm happy about that.
I love it. And I'm glad that you brought up that gardening metaphor, because that, it's one day, I agree with you. It's the seeds of possibility that we plant. And it's, we eat, it's like, and it's from where we're coming, for who we're being and where we're coming from. We have the power with our words and our conversations, but also just our identifying and discovering who we truly are. In every space we exist, we can plant seeds of beauty and of joy. And it's like, but it works both ways. And it's, we have the power to be toxic, but also the power to express beauty. And I feel what's happening right now is we're kind of seeing the symptoms of a lot of seeds that we planted that were not so, not necessarily good or helpful seeds, but we are seeing what's come of that, and we're facing it. We're forced to face it, and quarantine has been what opened up. Like everyone's has to look into the mirror right now. How did this happen? But that's why this movement is time has come, because we can intentionally plant seeds of happiness for ourselves, for our family, for our neighbors, for our community, for the people we don't know, for the people we don't even like. We could make it like when we're all better off, we're all better off. And I love that you said that. And I would love for you to come back and share more about your kindness circles. We're going to be starting our own kindness alliance, which is going to have all kinds of, empathy campaigns and some anti-bullying campaigns. But we'd love for you to come back and share some more with us, Jill. Really.
You bet. And actually, if you want the link, it's jilllublin.com/kindness circles. please put that up. And I invite people
Yeah.
to come in and keep being kind with us. JillLublin.com/kindness circles. That'd be super. You guys, I thank you so much for the interview today. I'm so blessed by both of you and your work and appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Jill. Thank
so
you for
much,
joining
Jill.
us.
Ciao for now.
All right, we'll see you next time. We're gonna bring Brigette back. Let's see here. There she is. Sorry,
So I know Jill. She's so amazing. I met her. I remember I said I recognized her hair. We had a call and we talked about working together.
Well, perfect. Ago. It's a small world.
Yeah.
We've been meeting so many people like in so many circles, and the world keeps getting small. It's like my experience is the world keeps getting smaller, and we keep getting bigger, and it's a beautiful dichotomy. I want to say real quick because I want to dive back into what we're talking about with Brigette, but I just wanted to say hello to our viewers and check in. This weekend we have an opportunity I want to invite you to. In particular, we're having this invitational, and it is an opportunity for you to bring your unique gifts, your unique contribution as a leader, to show up and co-create programs that we're going to be implementing around the world. We are building a foundation for this movement that we're going to have a world tour festival, One Day Heal the World Festival. We are going to have programs to enrich communities worldwide, starting here in Nashville, but we have an amazing team of people that are assembling. And this call on Saturday on Zoom is an opportunity for you to share your voice, you to co-create with leaders whose shared value is to be a part of something bigger than themselves. The point is to be the people on these call are the people who want to not only make a difference, but they are committed to making a global impact. We are the space for you to give your unique gift. What is the gift that you never received as a child that you could give? Like, we want what is your unique skills, your unique passions, your unique gifts? Like, this is your place to show up to help us help ourselves. And there's so many beautiful things coming. I haven't even gotten started, but you want to be on this call. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be an amazing opportunity with some amazing, beautiful people. And now that I got that off my chest, I just wanted to say that. But so there's that invitation. So Brigette, before we just hop into it, is there anything that Jill said that spoke to you with everything that's been said so far?
Just bringing all of it. I mean, I love that, in terms of the power of stories and sharing people's experiences and narratives is so important right now, because as you said, we get caught up in the othering and dividing, right? Which is ultimately what is at the root of this, is that we've been coded to believe that people of one particular group are somehow different. They're not the same types of humans, right? And we know that these are stories that are made up. And even if we understand that on a rational level, we need to do the work, the hard inner work to unravel and unlearn those stories. And one of the best ways to do that is to really listen to Black people's stories and really lean in and understand their perspective through their lens, and not trying to always look at their experience through our own lens, which is hard to do, right? Because our entire lives we've lived. So I feel like those stories and hearing more diverse voices in stories for me right now is something I'm really thinking about and focusing on, which is a lot of why, going back to ways that we as white presenting people can actually center and promote Black voices, which is a huge part of dismantling this monolith, is to simply bring forth those voices and say, hey, have you listened to this person, or have you heard this person? And that is something so simple and so powerful right now that can make a shift, assuming people are open and ready to receive.
Right. And actually, I want to say something on that thought. Like that caveat is everything to me, like assuming people are ready. And it's like, what the power of, I can't say you need to be ready. And it's like, and for me, a big part of it, and that probably one of the most difficult parts of this whole us discovering who we are and being able to see human in our neighbors, is being able to hear somebody who doesn't even realize that they're toxic, someone who doesn't even realize, they're not even aware of their own suffering and that it's bleeding out or spilling over to others. And it's like, it's like being able to let them recognize and to be able to be willing to face themselves. And that's one thing that is kind of amazing that's happening, especially since the recent civil unrest, is just the conversations that are happening in communities, in white communities particularly. People are like, am I racist? Or have I been like, people are like, and it's not always that cut and dry, but a lot of people are asking those questions. They are digging deep. And I've seen that's something that amazes me, that it's happening at all, but it's happening on a large scale and people are actually standing up. But what I see is where the line is divided is, not that there's only two sides, but can both sides see the humanity in the person that they disagree with, or the person that doesn't even see themselves? And it's like and what I see is it's going to require us really listening to the people who don't even realize that they're racist, who don't even realize that they're toxic. And it is still loving them, not saying, hey, you're great, I love you, keep on being racist. It's, I hear you, I see you, but do you hear and see yourself?
Yeah, and that's a powerful, beautiful, vision to hold. And I think one of the things that's so difficult for us sometimes to wrap our heads around is that we all have suffered and continue to suffer as a result of racism. And yes, black-skinned, more melanated people suffer more. They have more injustice. That being said, as white people, we suffer as a result of racism too, on so many levels, in terms of our deeply pained and poisoned unconscious mind, the guilt, the shame, all the things that I'm not afraid to say. I too suffer from these things. I too have moments of like, my own ancestors from Spain did this. I come from this, and intergenerational trauma and epigenetical trauma, which my colleague, Alexis Douglas, who's a Black spiritual healer, speaks to so eloquently. I don't mean to say eloquently in that because she's Black, she's eloquent. She makes sense of things that I can't actually understand from a scientific perspective. Like, she breaks down things like epigenetics into words that regular people can understand, which is hard to do because it's very, very complex science, right? So she has a gift of doing this in a way that helps us understand that trauma is stored in our DNA. And trauma is encountered by the oppressor and the oppressed. And there are different levels of trauma, and you have to hear Alexis speak to this. But we all have that in our DNA, right? Whether our ancestors were those that committed the atrocities or those that were victims, we all carry that from our parents and our grandparents. And especially if you're thinking about a woman's womb and the fact that I was in my mother and my mother was in my grandmother at the same time, the things that happened to my grandmother and even her mother in Puerto Rico when those Taino groups were attacked and raped and pillaged by Spaniards, some of that lives in me. And what lives in me is not only what happened to my indigenous ancestors and the pain, but what the ancestors that perpetuated did. And they acted out of fear and ignorance, and they experienced pain as a result of the things that they did. And so we are all harmed by it. And we all need to do the inner work to engage with that and release the shame around it. And also notice that it's okay to have feelings of defensiveness, shame, guilt, that we all as white people have tendencies toward white supremacism, to centering our views and our worldview, because that's just what it's always been. And it doesn't make every single white person evil. It doesn't mean you have to have a Klan hat on or be, actively harming Black people to have white supremacism. And this is part of the challenge with those terms and those narratives, is that white people get caught up in, but I'm a good person, I like Black people, I'm not racist. Listen, I'm sorry to have to be the bearer of bad news. Unless you have some type of a special brain that doesn't absorb images and messages from the universe, all of us have been coded with racism. All of us. It's just part of the narrative we've been told and shown our whole lives. And that doesn't mean, again, we're all overtly committing acts of racism and systemic oppression actively, but we are implicitly part of the system. And it's white people's work to figure out how we're complicit in the system and where we're in defense of things that's not me, or it's not about me. And how do we move out of feeling attacked when people are calling our attention to these things, right? And it's not to say that I'm above this, like, oh, I've got this all figured out. I'm in it. You know, I'm on the daily basis thinking about what's coming up for me when I raid an angry Black person speaking out passionately. What is my whiteness saying about that person? Oh, if they could just speak more gently or with more love, then maybe they'd come across differently and more people would relate to them. But why should they be calm? Why should they speak gently about something that has caused them deep, deep pain and trauma? Why is it less valuable or less meaningful for people to speak with sacred rage? And again, I hate to keep pushing Alexis, but Alexis Douglas is on my team and I'm going to say it. She speaks powerfully to this idea of the spiritual whitewashing that we've done to indigenous wisdom. This idea that love and light and just kindness and spirituality is all about soft words. No, it is not, honeys. Our indigenous ancestors were fierce warriors, and MLK and many, many other leaders understand and have connected deeply with the concept of the dark side, the shadow side, and sacred rage. And it is equally beautiful, and it is equally an expression of love. To speak with force and passion, the desire to make change, does not mean I'm dangerous or I'm going to harm you or I don't love you. And that is so important for white people to understand. And Matthew, I love you. And if I talk to you with force, it doesn't make it less relevant or less of an important conversation. So if Black people speak to you with anger, raise their voices, they might not love you less. They might love you more. They might care more. And this is the confusion that our society has around what love is. Love is not always sitting around with prayer beads in our Zen gardens, bypassing all the horrible things in the world. We can do those things. Please do your self-care, do your self-love, do your Reiki, do your meditation, do your mindfulness practices. And yes, get the fuck out there and scream and fight and break a system that is not working, because our system is failing everyone, and Black people are sick of it. And listen to Trevor Noah when he talks about why should Black people honor a system that doesn't protect and honor them? Why don't they have a right to want to smash it? Why should they respect stores and businesses and institutions that have never served them? Why can't we identify and empathize with their desire to break it? Why are we in that space of spiritual bypass? That's wrong. Looting is wrong. Well, Black people's bodies have been looted for centuries, and we let that go. It's been happening forever, and we never made a scene about it before. Why are we making a scene about someone burning down a Target? Because Target's got insurance, and they're going to be fine, honey. They're going to just go build another Target somewhere else. No one's saying, yes, go burn, go loot. Those things are good. But yes, I understand. I honor, I respect the sacred rage at what this system is and what it represents. And we as white people have to stop asking different people to be like us, to show up like us in this work, to be gentle, to be this, to be that. Black people get to be however the fuck they want around this. And it is, as Abram said, it's our work to figure out, like, why am I tripping? Why am I upset about why this person is speaking this way? What does it mean for me? And I can admit that I in the past have been that kind of person, like, ooh, that's a lot, or I don't know that I can absorb all that, you know, but now I understand it.
You've said a lot of profound things, and I wanted to just, there's so much to unpack there. I love it. This is fun. I'm having a good time. So you said a few things. One thing that came to mind is, and I'll kind of come full circle with this, but one example of that is Jesus. He was not white, and we see him as white, but he comes to mind for several reasons, and I'll get to that. But I just wanted to say one thing you said about love, and it's like, love is not always just love is not always hugs and kisses. Sometimes it's saying goodbye. Sometimes it's saying, I can't have you in my life. Sometimes that's the best way you say I love you. And that's something I've also, an irony I discovered in my own journey the hard way about peace is not avoiding conflict. It is not, it's not kumbaya, like la la la, pretending to block out the people that are yelling and shouting. I don't want to hear them. They're being mean. It's like, peace is not avoiding conflict. Peace is a state within us that like we have to bring and transform outside. We have to bring our inner peace to the outside. And I want to bring it back to what I was saying about Jesus is there is a such thing as righteous anger. And the whole time, like, and just talking from scripture, you know, there was a time where a few times Jesus was angry in scripture, and the only times he actually expressed righteous anger was when there were systems, like it was like religious systems, like the Pharisees, that were profiting off building systems of preying on people who didn't even know, like they were disenfranchised, and it was almost the same as the exact system of oppression that you were describing. That is when anger is necessary. It is when there are people, individuals who profit off of the systematic, dehumanizing of others. And I think there's so many points in history where that's the same thing the lesson that we haven't learned. But I see anger is sometimes the way, like anger is not the same as war. Anger can be righteous when it is pointed at an injustice, at a system of compressing or belittling humans to make it's like it's you understand what I'm saying? It's like I see it all.
I hear you 100%, right? I mean, it's not about people aggressively attacking each other. You can have those angry moments, but having anger at injustice and having sacred rage is very much what our wonderful Dr. King taught us, that we need that powerful sacred rage to motivate and move the masses into taking action. Otherwise, we're all just asleep at the wheel, because the reality is, I can go back to my life tomorrow and forget all about Black lives, and I'm going to be fine. And Black people can't do that. They don't get to go back to their life as regular business as usual and say, I'm going to put Black lives on the shelf. My Black friends that are women that have Black boys can't go back and forget about this. They don't get to go to bed at night when their teenage boy goes out with his friends and every night pray that their son never, ever gets stopped by a cop.
Right.
I don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so Black people don't get to forget. They don't get to have the opportunity to say, well, I'm going to take a break from this movement, from this time. And that's right now what is so important, is that this work of dismantling racism and oppression is a life journey. And if every single white person committed to just looking at it like 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, to do something to continue to talk about, raise awareness, and move the needle, we can unravel this. But it's white people's work to do this.
Mm-hmm.
We are the ones that have to do it.
Right.
And so that it's like you said, it starts with us looking inward and understanding, like, how have I been complicit? How does this show up in myself as a human being? Even when I'm a good human, I can be a good human and have bias. I can love Black people and be discriminatory. I can even have a Black husband and still have racist narratives. These things coexist. And the problem with our society is we are so black and white, literally, that we forget that all these things exist in duality. You can be a good person and be racist. And when we can reconcile that and allow ourselves to still be who we are and be human and have those aspects of ourselves and do the work to dismantle them, and then, yes, outwardly focused, what are 2 or 3 things I can do tangibly as an ally, as an individual, or as a leader, or using my business as a lever for that? Like, what are some concrete things I can do? I mean, you can join Maisha Hill in her work through the Co-Conspirators Lounge, and she will tell you simple, everyday things you can do to report and push for police reform. So Maisha Hill's a great person to follow if you don't know where to start. If you want to dismantle your own inner work and do the work, Louisa Duran and Trudy LeBron have an incredible program called Working Toward Woke. They have a podcast called That's Not How It Works. Alexis Douglas is a person, if you're a spiritual healer or a light worker, and you're coming up against this possibility that you're spiritually bypassing how Black people navigate this issue, or you're using your white spirituality to gaslight people. there's work there. So each of us can look at, where can I do my inner work, and then where do I invest some of my energy in doing the outer work to contribute to something. And again, just spending our money differently is huge. Spending our money with small Black businesses can be a great way for us to exercise our allyship through our dollars, or referring people to Black businesses, to Black consultants, to Black coaches, to Black healers. If you don't know any, start with getting to know some and then refer them out. Look at who you do business with and how you do business, and start to grow your circle and shift the lens around how and why you choose people to do work with, and to benefit in the work that you do in the world. I mean, those are some of the simplest ways that I can give people to think about how to use their time.
There was something you brought up earlier I'd like to go back and touch on, the duality. That's something I really, really appreciated just in my own experience. That the inherent contradiction that seems to exist in my beingness. And I tend to be very careful, except when in moments where I catch myself overwhelmed by anger or sadness or depression or something like that. And I'm not really being aware of what I'm saying. But when I'm really paying attention, when I'm conscious of what's going on internally, and I'm watching the words that come out, there is an awareness of only speaking to my own experience, because that's all I know. Like, at the end of the day, my own experience is all I have. I don't know what it's like to be a Black guy. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I don't know what it's like to be anyone other than me. And I do recognize that duality in myself, that there is this capacity for compassion and love and empathy and co-creation, and at the same time, there's a capacity for hatred and cynicism and bigotry, and it does exist in me. And one of the things that I've really come to a place where I'm finally comfortable with is that inherent contradiction. And I see it in a lot of things, not just in my internal experience, but in my external experience as well, where it is possible for something to be two completely different things at the same time. And I feel like that's something that, like, and again, this is something I can't say to, I don't really know, but it's just this sense that I get that seems to be at the core of a lot of this struggle, is accepting the contradiction that is inherent in our experience. And I hear so many people saying things like, this is the way it is. Well, yeah, it is that way. And it's also this way too. Like, it seems to be both at the same time, as far as I can tell.
But why is it that way is what we don't ask. So we're so caught up often in saying it's this way, right? But then we've got to go down and say why. So we could say, like, yes, there's crime in Black communities, and there's injustice toward Black people that overly criminalizes them, and these two things coexist. And when we stay on that surface level, that's where we get stuck. It's when we go down and go, why is there such a high level of criminality in Black communities? How did that happen? What gave rise to those types of crime levels in specific groups? Is that real? And then we question it and go underneath it. That's when we start to find more truth, right? Because we get caught up in I see these two things on the surface, right? But how do we go dig down deep? Because we've been shown something for forever, right? This idea.
I tend to go to the question what, like, not why, but what. Just because why tends to put me in my head. Like, it tends to put me in this very mental space. And this is just a little trick I've learned for myself, where, like, what brings me down to a deeper intuitive sense. And
Should we trust our intuition around racism as white people because of our acculturation? I mean, I think that's a really interesting, powerful thing to consider. Like, as white people, with how we've been wired, should we trust our intuition around these topics?
That depends entirely on how you're defining intuition. So I can tell you how I define intuition. Um, Intuition to me is that is bigger than me. It is that sense of knowing that is outside of my mind body experience. God, the divine, Holy Spirit, like, whatever word fits best. But it is it is that, like, that thing that seems to have a larger perspective and a deeper wisdom. And the experience I've had with it is trusting that has always brought more joy and ease in my life every single time. So that is intuition to me. Um, and I do trust that. Like, I trust that above all else. And I invite these conversations. I love these conversations. Like, anything that makes me really look at myself and go, oh, okay, is there still a little bit of ego there? Is there still a belief that I was holding on to? Is there still a fear that I was being trapped by? Is there still a desire that I was following that isn't that deeper thing?
What are your thoughts at this point, Abram, at where we are in the conversation?
You know, I see I see so many different things, because I see society as a whole is, we've like gone through this whole, well, there's the whole COVID experience, which I feel opened up we're witnessing the world really turn back to its heart, or to our hearts, in a way, like in a way that, like, we're seeing other people's pain. And that's something that is amazing to me, that almost seemingly overnight, entire echelons of society are like, hey, these people are suffering. Why have we allowed that? And to me, that speaks to it's the authenticity that we didn't even know was under, like, as a society. There's the old system, the old game that we thought we had to play, which was in the context of the illusion of separateness. Is, I'm going to get rich, get famous, get a lot of toys, then die. Like, that was the game that we almost thought, like, we thought was important. We thought we had to play. And it's like, it's all survive. It's the paradigm of survival. I got to make sure I'm okay, make sure my family's okay. And I see that has been the game of humanity for a long time, for generations and generations. And I see, at the same time, of that old paradigm is kind of like, we're seeing with COVID is like, wait, what's the impact I'm making? Like, maybe this, like, the quarantine made us look in the mirror. It's like, what's happening? How did it get here? And that's where I see this newer paradigm in these conversations is, what's the impact I'm leaving? What's the world I'm leaving my children? What's the world I'm leaving my grandchildren? How did we get here? And I see those two conversations as the defining, that's the defining path of where we, humanity, have a choice right now. Like, in every moment, we can follow either of those paths. And I see authenticity has never been more valued than it is now. Like, it's like, I observe it in social media, but also in just like the how all the late night hosts, for example, are like having their shows at home, and you see their kids and you see their families, and it's like, everyone's like, oh, that's so sweet. And it's like, but we're seeing human in people. And all of a sudden, because we were forced to have that authenticity, people are valuing it. It's like, wait, that feels right. That feels like that's how it should be. And so, like, I see the old paradigm wasn't even aware that it was a paradigm. People just thought that was the world. Like, this is how it is. And now people are questioning it. And that's where I see it. It always comes back to my individual experience of the world and how I see myself. And it's like, and I see I use the word spiritual, but you could use a million other words to describe. The word is not important, but what I see is the conversations and the discovery happening in individuals is what is accelerating at a rapid rate, faster than we've ever seen. And I choose to focus on, despite all the craziness happening in the world, there are people like yourself, Brigette, that are doing remarkable things. And if I can build and provide a space to be a lighthouse, to say, hey, everybody over here, we're about you. Whoever you, we love you. No matter who you are, you belong. You have a unique gift, a unique passion, a unique talent that if you recognize that in yourself, you can share that with everybody. You can share that with me. You can share that with him. You can share that with her. And I choose to focus on what beauty is happening in the world. And that's, I'm a musician. I believe progress is not, while science is an important part of progress, we don't see the progress until the arts and music point us to wonder, to experience beauty within ourselves. And it is like when we hear a song that's like, or see a piece of art that just points us to something to beauty that we didn't even know we could experience, to emotions we didn't even know we were feeling. It's that split second. It's like, oh, what I didn't even know I could feel that way. Like there's something way bigger than I even knew. And it's like I see the purpose of me and the purpose of my art, but also this movement is to point people to that experience of wonder, that experience of beauty within themselves that they didn't even know was there. And that is the space where people become willing to discover who they are as a possibility and not as a label, not as and so I see all the things happening in the world right now are symptoms of the same lack of that experience and lack of that conversation. Mm-hmm. And so I see, while there are a lot of toxic people and there's a lot of conversations of division and separateness, the only way those people will find their way out of that fog, the way out of that darkness, is to shine a light of authentic wonder, of beauty. That it just like that's what art it is, through the arts and humanity. It's through the arts that we see humanity in others, and that's what this virtual stage is for. It is everybody's coming from a different place. He's Mexican. She's from China. He's Christian. He's Muslim. She's Hindu. It's like, no matter where you're from and what your vantage point, your cultural perspective, and what scriptural context is for you, you always got to who you truly are by facing something in you that you didn't even know would point you to who you are. It's like we have to experience who we're not and distinguish for ourselves that we're not these stories, we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions. And when we distinguish for ourselves that is what opens the door to see who we really are. Mm-hmm. And I see that's it, because I could give you all the science, all the charts of why we're the same and how everybody should do this and should do that. But it is not the intellectual decision. It is the emotion, the underlying experience of something bigger than ourselves that makes us take action. And I see that is how we see the human in our neighbor. Is to experience that bigger than life as we know it experience that points us away from, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I don't have it figured out. Maybe there's something way bigger at play than I could even explain or comprehend with my limited human mind. Like the complexities of the universe. Like how kidding do we think we are? If we think we can understand the totality of a ever like expanding universe in our one little tiny like small person, like how could like that? We're kidding ourselves if we think we can understand the world with our intellect.
Yeah.
Truth is not a piece of knowledge. It's not a book. It is an experience. And that's the difference between an experience and an idea. An idea is like, hey, Brigette, I have an idea. What do you think of it? And you'll say, oh, I think that's a good idea. Or maybe you should change that. Maybe you should change this. And it's not ideas that change the world. It is experience. It is the opposite. It's like an idea is something you have. An experience is something that has you, that changes your very experience of being human. It's like, I didn't even know this was the world. I thought it was this, but it turns out it's that, and it's this, and it's that. It's like bigger than me. That is what people like. I can't force anybody to go there. They have to be willing to see it on their own. And I really see the world through possibility.
Yeah.
I could focus on all the terrible things and this person's suffering and that person's suffering, which breaks my heart when I experience and see others suffering.
I see so much possibility. I mean, I also live in a bubble of the Bay Area, and I live in a community in West Berkeley that has been integrated for years. And when I look at my little girl who's 75% Puerto Rican, and I see what it looks like to raise a child to be actively anti-racist and not to be afraid to say, I see color. I see that little girl. She's Black. She's beautiful. Her hair looks different than mine. That it's safe to tell your child that Black people are amazing and Black people are beautiful and Black people are not treated the same as white people. And we have to fix that. That it's safe as white people to feel scared, that it's safe for us to be defensive, that it's safe for us to be fragile, that it is safe for us to have feelings that are uncomfortable. And if there's one thing I can just ask of all of us is that we embrace our resilience and the fact that we are all infinitely capable of stretching and growing in discomfort. And that when we allow for more and more discomfort, that is when we grow the most.
I love it.
It's just, there's just one thing we can do. It's just that one simple truth is just trusting and knowing I'm going to be okay. I'm actually going to be better for this discomfort and for this pain. Right. And it's not,
I think you pointed to it. And it's in that, it's like, it's in that discomfort. It's in our fears. It's in that one thing that we don't want to face that actually points us to the experience of who we truly are. And it's like, I could say that unequivocally. Like, I don't even want to say it's a fact. It's like everybody who's actually goes to that point where like, I'm tired of suffering. I'm tired of feeling this pain. When they actually face that one thing that they say, I don't want to suffer anymore, but I don't want to talk about that one thing. It's like, it's that one thing that will take you to a place that you didn't even know.
Right. Or moving through that experience that you've just been avoiding or resisting. And that's the thing. Like the reason I named my business Embrace Change is because, and again, this is not to spiritually bypass and say we attract bad experiences, or if we've had trauma in our lives, that trauma was a gift. I'm really not into that narrative. But we can, through the trauma, through the pain, through the difficult things in our lives, find the growth and find the lesson. It's not to say we have to thank the trauma or thank the bad thing that happened to us, but we can still find the lesson and still find the opportunity in it. And that's where we challenge ourselves as humans, right? To realize that comfort is not where it happens. And so thank you guys so much. Like this conversation has been really incredible. I appreciate you both so much. Matthew, I appreciate you for having a courageous conversation with me where we did engage with some challenging concepts here. And Abram, I appreciate you and what you're building and what you're putting out in the world. I think you're an incredible human. And from the minute I met you, your energy is contagious and your spirit is contagious. So I'm just grateful to get to have spent this time with both of you.
Oh, it's mutual.
It's been a pleasure.
Really.
Thank you, Brigette.
I honor you, Brigette. You're amazing, and we need passion like yours because not everyone has the courage to speak up, and when you share, it makes others willing to. And I think it's so amazing, and that's kind of the recipe of this is like when we share ourselves authentically, it gives others the courage. Like, hey, I can do that. And I mean so much for you to be here and to share and to just have. This has been an incredible conversation. I love that. I love how much it's spanned and how I feel like we have to have a part 2. I would love for you to come back soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that. And I'd love to recommend some other great people that I think would really, really enjoy connecting with you both. So thank you guys so much for the space and take care of yourselves.
You as well. Yeah. Send them our way. I would love it. I want to talk to each and every one of them.
Absolutely.
But thank you again, Brigette. We will see you very soon on the stage. I can't wait to continue this conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Aloha.
And to all you viewers hanging out with us, thank you so much for being here. We acknowledge and we honor you for just sharing this time with us. This is such an interesting time in humanity, and I think it's remarkable to be able to experience it and to just what's possible now in this new world. Like, what can we do? What can I do? What can you do today to push this rock up the hill and to be the light and not to contribute to what's held us back in those old paradigms and those old conversations. But we want to invite you and encourage you to join us on this stage, to share your story, to share your testimony. What is your unique gift? Because it's a gift. It's it's not just something you have. It's something you have to contribute that helps me. It helps him. It helps her. Like, you sharing who you are makes it better for all of us. And I can't explain it until you actually do it. It won't make sense, maybe. But I really think you will gain so much, especially if you're thinking about it and you're not sure. I encourage you to give it a shot. This is a space where you can be you, where we will stand and accept you for who you are. And there's no one in this world that, doesn't have a gift. And some of them don't even know it, but we want to be that space to love you and accept you no matter who you are. So please see the website, and you have an opportunity to join us on the stage. I just want to share with you, this is what our mission is at One Day. Why we're here is we're bringing you and I and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. And, that's really what this is. It's what we create as a better tomorrow is seeing the people that are different than us, seeing the people we disagree with, seeing that we can be enriched by and learn and gain from the people who see the world differently than us. It doesn't mean we won't disagree. It means that we can actually do something with seeing a human before we see and sum them up as a label. Every label is always after the human part, but sometimes we focus on a label. I've done it. You've done it. We all have. But it is what our differences that actually will, when we come together with our differences, is what will make us actually able to solve challenges that will come in the future, like global warming, like sustainability. But this is part of our vision. It is humanity rising in a connected world with each person's unique contributions being valued and magnified through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. That's what we're doing, one conversation at a time. That's why we want you to share your voice, because we are a movement of people who want to participate in the coming of a new era of this world. And that only is going to happen when you and I stand together and say, this is what we choose our future to be, because we're doing it now. We're not waiting for someone else to do it. We are saying, now, this is how we are. This is why we are here. We all have a gift, and we all have something. We can all create something beautiful. But thank you so much. This has been a pretty passionate episode, and I'm really excited to just have the space and to share it with you. But we'll see you on next week on Tuesday. But I want one more time invite you on Saturday. We are having our one-day invitational. It is at 10 a.m. Central, and it's on Zoom. Go to the website, onedaymvmt.org/invitational. Thank you so much. I love you all. Stay safe. We'll see you next week, and be well. Take care, everyone. I love you. Bye.